Football at 4, powered by the Inside the Birds podcast, brought to you by Bet365. Whatever the sport, whatever the moment, it's never ordinary. At Bet365, Geoff Mosher from the Inside the Birds podcast is here today. We'll take a look at Eagles OTAs. Kevin Patullo also is the NFL coming after the Eagles again. A possible new rule with the way the Eagles do contracts is being looked at, and we'll discuss it all right now with Geoff Mosher from the Inside the Birds podcast, who joins us for a Wednesday edition of Football at 4 right now on the Sports Bass Live on 97.3 ESPN. Moshe, what's up, buddy?
Hey, Mike, what's going on, man? How are you? Happy beginning of OTAs week to you.
Yes, in fact, we are 99 days until the kickoff of the season between the Eagles and the Cowboys, and really the first time that reporters got to see the Eagles. They were out yesterday. Kevin Patullo spoke today. You know, one of my takeaways from Kevin Patullo, I want to see what you thought as well, was sounds like he doesn't want to reinvent the wheel here. Hey, we've got terminology. We've got something that we've done here for 4 years. It works. We don't really want to change things, but he did acknowledge, hey, I've taken stuff from Frank Reich and Chan Galley, which was a blast from the past, right? And Kellen Moore. And, you know, it sounds like I'm taking a little bit from everybody, adding it to what we've done, but we're not really changing much here. It should look a lot the same.
Yeah, and nearly every offensive coordinator and even defensive coordinator that I've come across has always had, multiple influences dating back to their first days in football to their more recent days in football. And you're right. The takeaway was that they're not looking to reinvent the wheel. I think that was a good way that you termed it. But it's funny because at the same time, Mike, a lot of the guys last week who were available for the availability, A.J. Brown, Jordan Mailata, Jalen Hurts, they discussed the concept of making sure that you evolve, and Jalen Hurts used the word new iteration of the offense. And if you remember in 2023, Mike, after the 2022 Super Bowl, when things didn't go so well, and especially when it didn't go well offensively, at the end of the year, Nick Sirianni said, well, we got stale. Our concepts needed to be more fresh, and therefore we brought in an outside guy in Kellen Moore. And so that's where I'm not – listen, we're really early. We'll have these discussions later when they're more pertinent. But could you potentially see maybe a struggle for this team, whereas they're trying to not reinvent the wheel. They're trying to do the things that they did best from last year, but because the league sort of catches on to these things or focuses more on stopping the run and makes them more of a passing team, does that in turn impact how they are offensively? Are they able to open it up? Are they able to do things that are fresher and considered more different concepts when in reality they're also trying to carry over what they did well last year? That is for discussions later down the road.
Yeah, it sounds like he wants to keep the continuity in the offensive philosophy. The one question I would have that I don't think was asked today was, hey, you are a pass game coordinator. You are now the offensive coordinator. Will we see a little bit more in the passing game based on your background as more of a passing game guy? He's a wide receiver coach in the past, and how might that influence the Eagles' strategy, in the offense this season?
Yeah, and I think even though that wasn't directly asked, I think you sort of got enough of Patullo sort of explaining that what they do offensively is really good. You heard him. He wound up mentioning every single position coach they had, but he really started off by saying we've got the best offensive line coach in the world. And for that reason, he talked about the running game and how effective they can be because of that. So I don't think they want to deviate from who they are. Do they want to be fresh? Do they want to be modern? Sure. But that's also been attempted before in the past to try to open it up and be more of a passing team. And it hasn't worked, to be completely honest, for the Eagles at times. They're better when they are running the ball, running it heavy, and more balanced.
Do we think, based on what we heard today, and I don't know that you read anything differently than me, but that he will assume full play calling duties, or will this be somewhat of a collaborative approach with Nick Sirianni? I ask this because Brian Johnson was kind of the safe hire the last time they went to a Super Bowl. He didn't have play calling experience. That didn't go well. Was this a safe kind of hire to a guy who has no play calling experience? And do we think that Sirianni makes this type of hire so that he can have a collaborative approach, or is that not what Sirianni wants anymore?
I I imagine that Patullo will be the play caller, Mike, and I don't know that his hiring was for Nick Sirianni to sort of be able to backdoor exert his own influence on the offense. There were things that they did last year that were still from what you want to call the Sirianni or the Steichen offense as well. And Nick is going to be the head coach and make the big decisions. This will be Kevin's play calling offense, but you've got a guy like Jeff Stoutland who's the run game coordinator. So when he's calling a run, right, it's going to be a play that's designed by Jeff Stoutland for the most part. So it's collaborative by nature nonetheless, and probably even more so than teams that don't have the quote-unquote run game coordinator and pass game coordinator.
Geoff Mosher, Football at 4 from the Inside the Birds podcast. I wonder, like, how does he – we don't know this yet, but how will he balance the existing offensive scheme that he said, hey, we're going to keep – we've done the same thing for the last 4 years with some new concepts because they don't really have a lot of new weapons. So I'm wondering what new could Patullo potentially add to make the offense more dynamic and more unpredictable, because that was one of the things they talked about in 2023 was that, hey, it seemed like a lot of people started to catch on to what we were doing.
Yeah, that's why I brought that up, because that was a team that I feel like the Eagles, when you talk to them now, they're not saying it, but it's almost like a lesson learned from 2023 that you can't just do what you did the year before and just say, hey, I've got a lot of firepower, so this should work, because they had a lot of firepower in 2023. Yeah. Also, they didn't have Saquon, but they sure had more upper-end offensive talent when you consider the line and the skill position players than most teams. And so that's why I think it's going to be an interesting balance for them to be able to strike. I think if you look at the 2017 team, the team that won the first Super Bowl, what they did really well, Mike, talked to John T. Filippo about this, and Frank Reich has spoken about it, and Doug Peterson, is being able to run different plays from the same formations, right? So you're putting a formation out there, 11 personnel, 2x2, or it's 1x3, and it might look like the play you ran 2 plays prior because of that alignment, but the routes are different. And the defensive look might be different that you're running it against. So there are ways to be creative and freshen your concepts without reinventing the wheel or changing who you are. And that's where I think this team is going to have to do that. I mean, when you think of the Eagles offense, even last year, the passing offense, it wasn't stale, but it also wasn't, I don't think, particularly cunning. Not that it had to be. I mean, if you saw A.J. Brown split wide to the left of Jalen Hurts, he was probably going to be running a slant or a dig, especially if it's a 1x3, you knew he was going to run some shorter backside route, or he was just going to run a fly down the field.
And that's where you wonder if Patullo plans to leverage the talents of guys like Devontae Smith and A.J. Brown, maybe more than than Kellen Moore did.
Yeah, or maybe there's some development you can get, Mike, and I know we talk about it every year, in the passing game to the running backs, which you saw at times last year, certainly on the opener with Green Bay, with Barkley catching the wheel route, right? Maybe there's ways to develop more Jahan Dotson or Anaya Smith or Johnny Wilson or somebody else so that you're able to throw him on the field and give a look that you haven't because you've developed this guy, and now the defense hasn't been watching 3 to 5 weeks worth of film on every single route that guy has ran.
Jeff, one of the things, too, is Jalen Hurts now entering, his 4th season as the main guy here. I'd like to get from you. I know this Patullo has been a wide receiver coach. In what ways can they further develop what Hurts' skills are and what he brings to this offense?
I just familiarity. I don't know if they can develop it more than Hurts can himself develop. He can probably see things faster. He can go back and watch the tape and say, there were a decent amount of times during the middle of the season where Kellen Moore called a specific play to get a guy open, say, between the numbers or here, and I didn't pull the trigger there. I need to do that now. Or he could say, I just won the Super Bowl without doing it, so I don't. So that's his decision, and that's obviously something for him and the coaches to be able to work out.
By the way, this is Jalen Hurts is now entering his 5th year as the quarterback, not his 4th year here in Philadelphia. Unbelievable that he's been here 5 years already. couple things. Let's start with no Huff today. Does that mean anything to you?
I think the you could easily look at that and say, oh, he's not happy. He knows he has no role. He's not showing up. It's voluntary, so he can get away with it. And maybe that's the case. It very quite possibly could be a statement on his part. The front office has said, hey, look, we're trying to make something happen here with you, as difficult as that's going to be, and we don't need you getting hurt or, pulling a hammy in a meaningless voluntary practice while we're trying to do something. So don't come here. That's been done before, and it wouldn't surprise me. I'm not saying I know that to be true, but it wouldn't surprise me at all if that was also the agreement from the front office, that it's not a big deal.
Yep, I know that was one of the key guys. I know Landon Dickerson wasn't there, Lane Johnson wasn't there, a couple other guys weren't there. But, Huff is a guy who signed a deal, didn't perform, you would think would say, hey, I'm here to win this job. And then first day there, not there. And I would imagine if Bryce Huff doesn't re-win that job, you put Jalix Hunt back at the top of the edge rusher list there?
I'm not even having that thought right now. To me, Nolan Smith and Jalix Hunt, if both are healthy, are your starting edges. You're looking at Azeez Ojulari to carve some kind of role there. Maybe Josh Uche if he can make the team as well. I don't think Vic Fangio is looking at Bryce Huff and saying, we got to get to this guy by this year. That's my mission. I think he's looking at Jalix Hunt saying, I got a really nice young D-end who does what I want him to do and help win me a Super Bowl. So that I don't even think these two I think they're mutually exclusive at this point.
One of the other questions that I have looking at what's going on here is Sidney Brown. We have been wondering if they're going to bring in some veteran player. Justin Simmons' name has been up a lot. Sidney Brown versus Andrew Makuba, and that kind of starts now, right? These are two guys that really need to start making impressions starting today.
Absolutely. And really Sidney Brown, like you're mentioning, is sort of in that, I'm not putting him in Bryce Huff category, but obviously Vic Fangio is pretty happy about having Drew Makuba here, and Reed Blankenship, who interestingly was not at OTAs today, he's a cemented starter, and so Sidney's got to prove to Vic Fangio that he deserves either a starting job or more time, maybe some big nickel if they want to play that, but he's got, yes, the onus is on Sidney Brown to show that in year 3 he's dependable, reliable, and can play in this defensive scheme.
All right, Moshe, let's look at some other things that happened today. Cooper DeJean said he's been playing both outside, inside. Mm-hmm. Everybody just wonders, it's Quinyon Mitchell, and then is it going to be Ringo and Adoree Jackson? Is it going to be Cooper DeJean opposite Mitchell and then sliding him inside in certain packages? Will he be the outside corner in place of Darius Slay?
He's going to be the nickel because 75% of the time the Eagles are going to be in nickel. I know the most important downs they'll be in nickel and he'll be inside. The question is, if a team comes out with 2 tight ends, right, and the Eagles have to respond in base defense, do they put Cooper DeJean out there, or do they put the guy that, whether it's Keelan Ringo or Adoree Jackson, where do they go? And remember, last year, Quinyon Mitchell was playing nickelback and into the first 2 weeks of camp. So you really can't make much of what you see in an OTA. But yes, Cooper played a couple of snaps outside when the offense when the defense was in a base look. But you also saw plenty of Adoree Jackson and plenty of Keelan Ringo on the outside too. So we're a long way to sort of getting an answer long-term of what they would do in that situation.
Yeah, I know early stuff today, but mostly, the skill players have more to kind of stand out in this type of atmosphere than the offensive linemen, defensive linemen generally, because you can show athleticism, speed, all that kind of stuff in this setting more so than an offensive lineman trying to block or, a defensive lineman trying to, show what he can do in terms of, strength and power in this setting. But that is where the Tyler Steen, Kenyon Green probably will not really do much here in these OTAs. But I would imagine that the Steen seemed to be working with the first team today, that do we think the Eagles want Steen to be the guy there once they get out of this and enter training camp?
I mean, yes. I mean, I think the Eagles always want a guy that they drafted who has multiple controllable years left to win, because, that aids them in the financial game, in the salary cap game, and being able. I mean, it doesn't really matter in this situation because Kenyon Green's going to be on the roster anyway. He has to be. His salary is guaranteed. But when you look at the long term, if Kenyon Green winds up being a starter and plays really well, just like Becton, he's going to price himself out. Whereas if Steen becomes a starter, plays really well, that's a guy that you can get extended if you want to next offseason, or still wait it out. And, again, if you're doing that next offseason, it becomes, in most cases, team friendly. It gives you a lot of options. A guy doesn't normally price himself out like that because he's not going to be a free agent like Green would be. So, so you root for just any of those guys being great, and that helps you. Like Becton was really good enough to help them win a Super Bowl, but what you would want in that case is, yes, the younger, more controllable guy.
All right. A lot of good stuff from OTAs today. Kevin Patullo spoke. We played you some cuts from that earlier. I guess the last thing I want to get your thoughts on is, the notion from Dallas Goedert today that, he thought his time was coming to an end here. They spoke about, getting him back. And can he have a bigger role in your mind in this offense?
Yeah, I actually think he can. I mean, he always seems to have a huge role in the playoffs. I mean, first of all, having a bigger role for him is making sure he plays as many games as he can. He's obviously, last year was, he was out for 4 weeks twice last year, so that was rough. But I do think he can have a bigger role in the offense in general, and that just depends on, where they use him, how they use him, and if Jalen Hurts becomes a better thrower, say, between the numbers, which is where Dallas Goedert, does most of his work anyway. But even if he doesn't, I mean, he's still really good at what he does and gets the ball enough to make an impact in any single game.
Lastly, Moshe, there's some possible rule changes coming about the voidable years and the way that the salary cap is set up. That is being discussed, and you wonder how that would affect a team like Philadelphia, as they are very good at circumventing the salary cap with those voidable years, and it seems that the league is targeting right at that rule.
It does. I mean, so what you're referring to is preliminary discussions here, or early discussions that took place at the owners' meetings that are really geared toward where they're at from a CBA standpoint with the players, and that's not up for another 5 years, I believe. So we're a long way away, but obviously if owners are sort of expressing some kind of concern, I think as Roger Goodell termed it, about the integrity of the salary cap and whether it's truly a hard cap when it can be manipulated the way the Eagles and a couple of other teams do they need to change it? So, and if the difference between this and the tush push is I feel like that there are so many owners who are going to look at how the Eagles do business and not want to do that as opposed to a tush push. And I could see down the road, and again, we're far from it, them maybe changing things up and trying to outlaw some of the things that the Eagles and other teams do from avoidable years and dummy years standpoint on contracts and the way they push money down the road,
right,
like a mortgage. And if that were to happen, Mike, there's no doubt that would be a crippling blow to how the Eagles currently do business. But before we get too far down the road, I will say this would be the second time that the league kind of did this to the Eagles, because the Eagles used to be the kings of renegotiating a rookie contract after 2 years, right? They would identify young talent. They'd miss a couple of times. Reggie Brown comes to mind, but they give a long-term extension just 2 years into a rookie deal, and that helped them retain a lot of talent on team-friendly contracts. But then the NFL nixed it, and then the players were starting to not like it either because they were so far from free agency and they would be so under market by the third or fourth year of that deal that they would, it caused all sorts. You remember the 2000s. There was a lot of problems. But the point is, it was a really good business maneuver for the Eagles that got outlawed. And then this would be another one that potentially got outlawed. But the Eagles find ways they found a way to adapt and to adjust to the last one.
All right, Geoff Mosher, everybody, from the Inside the Birds podcast. You can get that on all podcasting platforms. Of course, right here on Football at 4, each and every day at 4 o'clock on the Sports Bash. The Eagles OTAs, they take a little bit of a break. They will be back, Monday or Tuesday of next week is when they are back out on the practice field. And, of course, we'll have all the updates for you right here on Football at 4 on the Sports Bash. Geoff Mosher.
No trivia for me today, Mike?
He got 6 right. He got 6 right.
Well.
Yeah, the one that he got wrong. Let's see. I'll ask you the ones that he got wrong. Okay. Bryce Harper
told me one, so I got it right. So I know one of them that he got wrong. I will get right.
Okay, Bryce Harper and Kyle Schwarber each have 12 postseason home runs. Whose record did they break last year?
Oh my God! I guess two guys come to mind, so I'll say Schmidt.
Jason Worth was the answer.
Ooh, that's a tough one. All right, good one.
Matt Stairs hit his postseason home run first time ever in the 2008 National League Championship Series in Game 4 against this L.A. Dodger pitcher.
The big guy, the big right-hander, Broxton. Jonathan
Broxton is correct.
I'm sort of better with these little vignettes than like overall stats.
The Phillies won Game 1 of the 2022 World Series against the Astros. Which Phillies pitcher recorded the save in that game?
Oh man, and Astro Suarez came into that one. I think got the Robertson pitching that game. I'm going to say Suarez. I feel like he came in and got that left-hander out. Was it Jordan Alvarez? Is it Suarez?
It is David Robertson.
Oh, I was close.
You said it. You said Robertson came in to pitch in that game. Those were the ones that he got right. The Hinsky that I heard him tell you off the air. So that was the other one. Yeah.
Yeah, I had got that. He asked me the question, and I knew the answer. So I will say I did know that one.
Yeah, some of those are like you either know it or you don't. Like if you just remember Hinsky was the hitter, you see that. You see Lidge fall to his knees, and you just you can recreate the whole thing in your mind, and you just remember that it was Hinsky. Just like in one of the questions was, who did Tug McGraw strike out to win the 1980 World Series?
Oh boy. I would only say George Brett because that's the only Royal I can think of at the moment.
Willie Wilson was the answer. He got that one right. But that's one of those things. You just remember McGraw striking out Wilson, throwing the glove up in the air, right?
Yep, absolutely. You're right. I'd have to really squint hard to visualize the batter there.
All right, there's today's Football at 4. A little bonus baseball for you at the end. Thanks, man.
You got it. Take care, bro.
Geoff Mosher, everybody, here from Inside the Birds podcast, InsideTheBirds.com, and, of course, Football at 4 on the Sports Bash each and every day right here on 97.3 ESPN.